was in bed.
I just learned.
I've been on like a 6 different cinematic vision. Dude, Ambien, they like don't describe it as indicative, and it didn't.
Okay, so here's the deal, guys. If I'm just going to go into Photoshop and simply create a new file, I'm going to duplicate the layer. Then when you go back to just save that, so up to the save menu, down to save as, and a dialog box will open up, and you can pick the format that you want to save it. Photoshop is one of your options. Your other option is down here is TIFF. You'll notice if you change this to TIFF, you have a check mark down here asking whether you want to save layers. This is on by default. You should simply leave it on. And also the embedding of your color profile. You would want to save that this way. You would not want to change any of these. And then simply save your file using the file naming convention, and you'll be good to go. So I'm going to cancel out of that really quickly. So I'm going to go back again. We're not going through color lecture again. We are going to touch on one point in that color lecture, and I want to make sure that we got to that in this class. Let me get rid of the trippy hallucinating. So this is the thing I want to talk about in this class. Did we actually reach this point in the color lecture?
Yes.
We did, didn't we? So, and in this point, what we were looking at in this thing, what we were talking about in this thing is that we could actually, in a perfectly color-corrected workflow, you would actually have a profile for your camera that would correct for any deficiencies of your sensor. So everybody's sensor, just like everybody else's monitors, just like your printers, all that kind of stuff, they are device dependent. So if you can build a profile that describes your sensor, specifically describes the deficiencies that it has, is your sensor. One of the sensors we're actually going to do, we're going to generate one of these tonight. But the one that I use, one of the cameras that I use is hypersensitive to blue. So it actually, when blue light hits it, it overdrives the blue. So my blues that actually should be slightly darker are actually slightly lighter because my sensor is hypersensitive to blue. That is a deficiency in the sensor that if I can profile, I can use the profile to get rid of that. It will undo that, that mistake. So at any rate, that's how we actually get. So you go through that whole system into input software. This input software right here would either be Lightroom, C1 Pro, Camera Raw, whatever. This will then take that information and bring it into Adobe Photoshop working space. These working spaces are completely device independent. These are mathematical working spaces. Everybody in this room has the exact same one of these. That's the advantage of having this to be a theoretical space, is because it allows you, once you get your image into this thing, it allows you to then distribute your image out to a whole wide range of things, either to a monitor, to a printer, to somebody else's version of Photoshop, and your file basically remains unchanged. So that's kind of the process. However, we also need to generate a profile for our monitor and also profiles for our printers. So we're going to do 2 of the 3 tonight. We're going to do the monitor one and we'll do the camera one. We're probably not going to get to the profile for the printer stuff tonight, but we will do that in this class before this class is out. So the first thing that I want to show you is actually calibrating and profiling a monitor. So the Digital app has these things. You can check these out. And basically the way all of this profiling setup works is this. Is that there is a piece of hardware. This is the piece of hardware. They've got a number of them right now. They just got a brand new set of color monkeys, which are made by the very same company as this. They work exactly the same way, so whether you use this one or the new one, I don't think really matters that much. But nonetheless, what this is it is actually this is a spectrometer. This actually measures the wavelength of light. So it measures unambiguous color because it's not really looking at the color as much as it's looking at the wavelength. use the software that goes along with this, and this is the software that goes along with it. It's free. You can put it on as many machines as you want. This isn't something that's copy protected. My suggestion is that they're upgrading this stuff all the time. So once you load this software, just run the updater and see if there's a more recent version of the software. If there is, download that version and use it. But otherwise, that's the plan. So it's the combination of the two. The software is actually going to spit out a set of colors. The hardware is going to measure those colors. Any of the colors that are exactly the same, that's great. Nothing happens. But any of the colors that are off, if there is a difference, then the puck measures the difference. The software then calculates a way to correct for that deficiency. Does that make sense to everybody? What's going on here? Okay, so that's all of the color lecture I'm going to show you. Aren't you happy about that? So the actual application software program is called I1 Profiler. Let me get this thing plugged in first. It's right here. So you plug the hardware puck in, you launch this thing. It'll open up. And you can actually profile quite a few things. You can profile in this software. There's actually another even more advanced version of this. It's a much larger piece of hardware and a much more expensive piece of software that allows you to profile virtually anything. So you can profile all sorts of things. What this particular setup will let you do is it'll actually let you do profile display profiling, which would be your monitor. You could actually profile this projector. This particular setup right here, you cannot do printer profiling, but the other bigger, more advanced one that they have here in the lab, you can actually do that with. In addition, you can do scanner profiling with this. So they do have the gear here to actually do all of these, but this particular setup that I'm showing you right now is really good only for displays and projectors. So you would pick display because that's what we're actually going to profile. And this window comes up that's actually going to start the thing. You need to put in a couple of variables here first off in order to actually do this correctly. The first, and in my case, I actually have two things that I can profile now. I've got this color LCD, but I've also got this Canon WUX 5000. That's actually the projector that's connected to this. So in my case, I do want to actually I'm going to click on this color LCD because that's what I'm going to profile my monitor of my laptop. There'll be a drop-down menu here. You would only change this drop-down menu if there's a real specific reason to do this. Now, if you have state-of-the-art OLED monitor and you wanted to profile it, you would actually change this. But for the majority of you, it is going to be white LED for pretty much any typical monitor situation that you're going to run into. White point. In setting white point, did we look at color temperature and what color temperature really means? Did we have that discussion? No? All right, I'm going to jump out. I'm going to show you one other thing really quick. So I've got to quit this software in order to do that. Back into the color lecture, and it's this right here. So color temperature, and how on earth did they come up with the term temperature? This is where this whole thing comes from. There was a guy named Kelvin 300 years ago that figured out that if you took something and started to make it colder and colder and colder, what you ultimately are really doing from it is you're removing the energy from it. Pretty much everything in the world has molecules in it, and those molecules move. And that is a certain amount of energy. If you heat those molecules up, they move faster. If you cool this down, they move slower. And eventually you get to the point when you remove all of the energy, the molecules actually stop. That is considered to be 0 degrees Kelvin. You can't get any colder than that because at that point, whatever it is has absolutely no energy in it at all. They call that a theoretical black body because, again, because there is no energy in it at all, it's not giving off any light, it's not giving off any heat. It's as black as you can get. That happens around 273 degrees, minus 273 degrees Kelvin. Celsius. But at any rate, Kelvin decided he was going to create a new scale, and he was simply going to call that 0. That was going to be 0 degrees Kelvin, where there was no energy at all. And then he could start adding energy, and he could go on infinitely. As long as he could come up with more energy, he could add more energy. So what he ended up doing is that he took this theoretical black body, he started to add energy to it, and as he was adding energy to it, the molecules start to move again, and as he added more energy and more energy, just like everything that we know this happens to, it starts to heat up, and eventually it starts to glow. Now, you typically know that with a light bulb. You start to put energy through a light bulb, it heats it up, and it ends up, the molecules in there end up moving so fast, they actually start to emit light. At about 2,000 degrees Kelvin, you end up with this really orangey-ish color. This is the color of light that's actually produced. As you continue to warm things up, you get into this range right here around 3,000 degrees Kelvin. 3,000, 2,800 to 3,400, in that range right there is basic tungsten light. So the light you would have in a typical light at your house, old incandescent light, whatever, is roughly around this 3,000 degrees Kelvin. If you use any of the hot lights in the studio, the Mole Richardson hot lights in the studio, those are tungsten and quartz lighting. Those tend to be closer to 32 to 34, but it's still this really kind of warmish light. And if anybody here has ever, the people who used to shoot film, transparency film, not color negative film, but color transparency film, you actually had to pick whether your film was going to be balanced for daylight or balanced for tungsten. It's because of this reason. Daylight is actually much, much, much bluer. So at any rate, he continues to put energy into this energy. He keeps putting more and more energy into it. I'm going to pass over the middle for just 1 second. So by the time you get up into this range of like 9,000 degrees Kelvin, this would basically be the color of light on top of a mountain on a clear day. So if you really get up high, really high altitude, you have that brilliant, brilliant, brilliant blue sky. There's nothing else really up there. You end up getting in this range to 9,000 to 10,000 degrees Kelvin. And you can see that this light is really blue. This blue is actually the complement to this orange. And so what you find is that somewhere right in the middle, the blue cancels out the orange, and the orange cancels out the blue. And that happens right around 6,500 degrees Kelvin. That is what we are considering now to be neutral white point. There used to be, back in the old days, in the United States anyway, there was an argument made, and if you ever did shoot color transparency film, they would always say that the color white point of daylight was 5,500 degrees Kelvin. That's actually more a consequence of images that were printed on paper, because paper back then inherently had a slight yellow tint to it. So 5,500 degrees Kelvin is slightly warmer, but the accepted rule now all over the world, 6,500 degrees Kelvin was always white point in Europe. I'm not really sure about Asia, but I kind of think it was in Asia as well, but don't quote me on that. But it has been the standard in Europe forever. It is now the standard that we use in this country. And the reason this matters to us is, are there any questions about this? Okay. The reason this matters to us is the first thing that you actually do when you are setting, when you're calibrating your monitor, is you have to tell the software what white point it is that you want your monitor to show you. Because your monitor can actually be made to be warmer, cooler, all the whole 9 yards. So again, I'm clicking on display profile, I'm clicking on my color LCD. This white point right here you need to set, and it is not native. This would be a huge mistake. So you need to change this native, and you will, again, you will see right here, there is an, you can actually pick a CIE illuminant of D65. These are all daylights. There's a D50, which is 5,000 degrees Kelvin. There's a D55, which is 55 degrees Kelvin. I mean, 5,500 degrees Kelvin. This D65 is the one that you want to pick. This is considered to be the most neutral white. This D75 would be slightly cooler. Anyway, so D65 is the one that you want. The luminance. Now, we talked about this in our very first class. What sets the black point of your monitor? What controls how black your monitor is? What's controlling how black this monitor is right now?
How much energy is it?
See what?
How much energy is it?
Yeah, and there's no energy in here at all. So that's not controlling it. Is there anything, though, can I make this monitor blacker than it is right now? It's blacker, trust me. Environment controls your black point. If you are trying to do retouching in a room full of sunlight, what ends up happening, and this is to all of you people who end up having your prints that are printing out way too dark, what ends up happening is this. If you are in a bright room your image on your screen looks bright and you actually make it darker. You dial it down. If you're in a dark room like this, you actually have to brighten your image. Your image seems too bright. Your image does not seem bright enough, and you brighten it up. Your black point actually seems darker, so you actually brighten it up. You need to be in a controlled environment that actually has the right black point to end up then having the image that you're looking at correctly to print out. Does that make sense? However, that's only half the equation. That's your black point. What controls your white point is how bright your monitor is. And all of these monitors are set blazingly bright. They are way too fucking bright. And that's also causing you a problem because your monitor is so bright, you keep making your image darker so that it looks correct on your screen. But the problem is your monitor's too bright. But you've made the image darker so that it looks correct on a monitor that is too bright. Therefore, the information in your file is asking for a print that is much darker than you want it to be. So if you get the black point correct and the luminance, which is what we're talking about, how bright your monitor is, if you get those things correct, your printing too dark, too light it won't be completely eliminated, but it will be improved on the order of 95%. Does that make sense? So that's what we're going to do. The typical situation that you want for the darkness in a room, what you would like to have is a room that is dark enough that you want to be able to see the shit in your room. You want to be able to see the chair and the table and that, but you don't want it a whole lot brighter than that. This room here right now with this big thing on here and all these monitors is too bright. This would be considered too bright for a really good retouching room. Make sense? So you got to get your environment under control. You can't have windows that light comes in and light doesn't. People who start retouching in the daytime with light coming in and they keep retouching right on into the night, their image has completely changed from morning to night because their black point changed because of the brightness in the room. So at any rate, you need to change this. The value that you're looking for in luminance is 120 candelas per square meter. It's this guy right here. Some people will suggest 140, roughly in this range though. Anywhere from 120 to 160 is probably the place that you want to be. I'm going to set mine for 120 right here. That is the one that will be correct for this monitor right here. The gamma, what gamma is gamma is simply a curve. Everybody in this room experimented with curves last week, right, in Photoshop. You put a curve on, and what it does is it remaps tone, right? You take dark tones, you make them lighter, light tones, you make them darker, mid-tones, make them lighter, mid-tones, make them darker. That is the shape of those curves that you guys built is called gamma. That's what gamma really is. So the curve that they're talking about right here, the tonal response in this curve, is the contrast of your monitor. You can leave that set to standard. There's different, people will calibrate stuff to different things for different reasons. For instance, people who do electronic microscope work will do different series of settings in here, but that's not you guys. The gamma setting right here is, again, the contrast curve for your monitor. You definitely want to have this set at 2.2. This is now the accepted standard. In the initial days of Macintosh, there was a lot of talk about having this at 1.8. That 1.8 was, again, used to emulate a printed piece of paper. Your monitor is not a printed piece of paper. Your monitor actually should have a gamma of 2.2. Next thing down, and it's this thing. Talk about give the baby the hand grenade and pull the pin. This is one of them right here. This adjusts the profile based on my ambient light. So what you're saying to the software is, okay, I'm going to shut all the variables down. I'm going to make a profile that'll give me a reproducible color, but then I want you to fuck that all up. I'm going to click this button that says you can change the profile depending on how bright the light going into the camera on my monitor, on my laptop is. So the profile is going to be in constant flux. That kind of defeats the whole purpose. So you think, okay, this is all great, fine and well. I'm ready to go. I've got everything shut down, but you don't. Because if you go up to the Apple menu, I need everybody to do this with me really quick. Come up to the Apple menu, come down to System Preferences. A dialog box will open up, and in the second row of that dialog box, you've got Display. If you click on Display, and again, I've got two windows now because I've got, one is for my monitor, one is for my laptop. I don't know that this is going to show, yep, it does show up on yours, and yours is set incorrectly. See that checkbox that says automatically adjust the brightness of your monitor? Well, you're saying to it, what you're saying is instead of letting me set the brightness, you're going to use the camera on my iMac or on my laptop, and if the room gets brighter, it's going to make my monitor brighter, and if the room gets darker, it's going to make my monitor darker to match the light to try to keep it consistent. Does everybody have that? Yeah, well, it should be unchecked because that is, again, defeating the whole purpose of eliminating the variables and profiling your monitor. So it's in two places. It's inside this software right here. This would do it inside the profile, but you've also got that setting in display for your hardware. So this is now set up and ready to go, and I'm going to hit next, and it's going to say, this is exactly what we're talking about. This is the set of colors that the software is going to actually throw out to my monitor, and that hardware puck is going to measure these guys. So that's the plan. So I'm going to say, go ahead and start the measurement here. And it's going to walk me through it. It's going to say, okay, see this blinking thing? This is the hardware puck. There's a protective cover on this. You lift it up, and then you can rotate it out of the way, which reveals the clear lens that you're going to use to measure this guy. If you guys in the back can't see this, stand up, because I'm going to do this on my laptop. You can come around here. I need you guys to see how this works. There's a weight on the other side of this thing, and the weight slides up and down this. This weight is actually used simply to counterbalance. You put this on your monitor like this, and then you put the weight on the back, and it will keep this attached to your monitor. You always want to tip your monitor back like this so that the thing rests solidly against it. If you have your monitor tipped forward, you get this, which will give you false readings. So again, tilted back like this, stuck in the center like this. When you do that, then you click on OK to this, and then hit Next. It's ready to go. Now what's going to happen, this is a two-step process. The first step right here is it's going to try to say to me, okay, you wanted your luminance at 120 candelas per square centimeter. Look at what it measured. My monitor is set right now to 168. My monitor is too bright. Unfortunately, Apple has really shitty controls for this stuff. Instead of having a real fine-tuned something you hit this stupid button that looks like a bright sun or a dark sun. Wow, how exacting is that? So then it gets worse. So I'm going to hit this down one, and it just, you'll see, I just went from 168 down to 141. I'm going to hit the darken button again, and oh, that was the lighten button, sorry. The darken button, and I hit it again, and so I'm now at 116. You'll probably never hit this thing exactly, but I am extremely close to where this thing should be right now. Again, in my other monitor that I use at home, I usually work at 140, so I'm going to hit the brightness one, and the 141, this is where I'm going to actually leave mine right here, because this is closer to the range that I use in my other monitor, but you're trying to get close. The problem I have now is, how bright is my monitor? Well, look up at my screen. It is, and I want you to count the number of lit up bars and the number of non-lit up bars. And how many is it? But in order to count it, I have to change the brightness. So I'm going to go down one. How many is really quick? So it's 1, 2, 3. I don't know. So then I'm going to do a brightener one up, whatever, and then I'm going to say, well, fuck it. It's about a third of that brightness. That's where it is. But that's a problem. Because again, if you don't set this exactly the way it's supposed to be, so what a lot of people will do is they'll put little pieces of tape on their screen to actually give them what you need to count those number of bars. Does that make sense? So that once you build this profile, if you change your brightness to do word processing, it doesn't matter. But you've got to, if you are serious about your color correction and your retouching, you're going to have to go back to that number of bars because that's what this profile is built for. Otherwise, your monitor is too bright and your prints are too dark. Are there questions about this? Okay, so this is now set correctly. Hit the next button again. So now this is going to be a double pass. The first pass that it's going to go through, and you'll see it's spitting out color now. This thing is actually measuring that color. What it's trying to do now is establish the white point. It's trying to set D65 as my white point, again, in degrees Kelvin. And it's also trying to set the contrast. It's trying to give me a gamma contrast of 2.2. So it runs through this pass the first time. Then it's going to do the same thing a second time. And the second time what it's doing is it's shooting out known colors in a calibrated environment. It's measuring those known colors and developing my profile. So the first pass is to try to get my screen to a known state, D65, 2.2 gamma. The second pass is to actually say, how good is this monitor? Where are the good points? Where are the weak points? Where's the positive part? And to build the profile then that will actually neutralize my screen so that my screen is ultimately going to be the same as Adam's screen when he profiles this one, the same as Erin when she profiles hers, and the same as everybody else's when they profile theirs. Something that you need to know about. They are having issues with calibrating the monitors in the digital lab right now. What's happening is when each and every person logs in, it's loading their individual color profile. If you have not built your own, you are getting a generic version that's been loaded. So if you're going to work on these machines, you've got to check one of these out. You're going to have to calibrate these monitors. They're getting it worked out. It may actually be worked out by tomorrow or the next day where you won't have to worry about this. But if you have any doubts about this at all, you damn well better be doing working on a calibrated monitor. If you've got your own laptop, you can certainly calibrate your own laptop and be working on this. This is specifically important for things like color correction, things for contrast control, brightness, all of those decisions you need to do in a calibrated environment. You can do word processing on anything. Okay, so this is cranking through the end of it. And now it tells you what to do. It says, okay, we're done. Take the little puck off, spin the little protective cover back on, and close it up. The minute you do, the software knows that you've actually done that. Then go ahead and hit next again. Look at what happened. These are before and after colors. If you look at the top color here, this is the color that the software asked for. This is the color my monitor gave it. How the fuck do you color correct when your monitor is doing this much damage? Look at the befores and afters here.
Wait, the top one is the...
The top here is the asked for color. The bottom here is the color that my monitor gave it. In most cases, way too saturated. Again, Steve Jobs, saturate the shit out of these monitors. All your pictures will look really good. Yeah, Steve, I want real color on mine. I'm a photographer. I want real color. Oh, well, get another monitor now. Does that make sense, what's going on here? This gets worse. I need everybody to stand around here because you can't see this up on the screen. You can only see this on my screen because I'm going to show you the before and after of the actual profile on this monitor, and that's one showing you that the projector one. So all of this part has been ready. So we're actually, this part's ready to go. It's been done. You hit next again, and it's going to say, create the profile. Are you ready to do this? And I'm going to say yes. And it says, okay, we're going to name it Color LCD. This is meaningless. You don't want it to name it Color LCD. You are going to call this your name. I'm going to use my name, Verser underscore. I typically don't put any spaces in stuff like this. This is actually a file that's going to go into your system. Sometimes it's okay with spaces, sometimes it's not. As a matter of fact, it's probably even a better idea not to have a capital in there either. But anyway, so I'm going to do Verser underscore, that takes the space, MacBook Pro. Okay. Underscore 201609. What's the date? 28. Okay, 0928. So now I know exactly what this is. This is my MacBook Pro and the date that it was actually done on. In terms of where this gets put, user level is what is actually set to right now. They're not letting you write this system-wide, meaning that in the case of like these guys, every individual user who logs into this is going to have their own individual one. This will not let me write one for everybody. As far as the profile reminder, you could actually turn this on. What will happen if you turn this on is every week or two, it's going to say, hey, profile your monitor. So at any rate, this is something you should actually be remembering anyway. Again, this ambient light monitoring, we've actually got this turned off. They give you another place to turn it back on, which you do not want to do. And then finally, we're going to actually click on this thing and say create, click and save profile. It's actually gone through the whole thing right now. It'll give you a way to do all sorts of comparisons. I'm going to show you the best comparison that I can show you, though. This thing has now done its work. I'm going to quit this. I'm going to come back up here to System Preferences. I'm going to go to Displays. Then again, you need to pick, this is my built-in display right here. This is the Canon projector over here. So the built-in display right here, if you click on Color, you will actually see
all the profiles that have been made. So this is my list of profiles. Most of these are for this guy, but I also have one for my external monitor. So this thing, the profile that you made is actually in effect. They load it and they put it in place for you. So you can see the Versa MacBook Pro 2006-0928. So this is the profile and state that we're just in. This is what Steve Jobs sent you when you bought your Macintosh. I'm going to click and show you the original profile.
Ooh, wow.
So this is profiled. This is not. So not only is your screen, this typically, these ship with a white point of around D9000, D9500. They're incredibly blue. And you saw the color mismatching. You want to know why all of your nightmare exists, why you cannot get correct color? Not only Steve Jobs, but just the fact that even if it wasn't Steve Jobs, even if he started out correctly, you have got to do this every time you are really serious about doing color correct work. Does this make sense? Are there questions about this? How often should you profile your monitor? The truth of the matter is, if you work for Disney, I think I told you guys this, if you work for Pixar, every day. If you don't do it every day, you're fired. If in terms of you guys, a more practical thing I would say would be this. You should probably be profiling it at least once a month, if not every couple of weeks, but at least once a month. And definitely every single time you're ready to do really critical color work, you should profile it that morning. It's just that simple. You can check these things out. They let you take them home for 2 or 3 days, and you can check them out as often as you want. I think a lot of them here, so no reason not to do this. These also exist in the photo studio. If you are shooting in the photo studio and you're not working on a calibrated monitor, you're guessing at what you're looking at.
Where is this profile saved? Like, give it back to them.
If you want to actually go looking for it, again, everybody go back to their machines right now, and I'll show you how to get to it because it's not completely instinctive. Did we get to it all? How you get to the library, the user library on these on your machines? The user library has been made invisible. So if you go to the Finder, that's where I need you to go to, because the question is, where do you find these things? Apple actually used to have this visible. They don't make this visible to you anymore. But in order to find the thing that you just made, you need to make what is called the user library visible. In order to get that, if you come up to the Go menu in the Finder and you click, and you will see a drop-down menu, you do not see library anywhere in this. However, if you add the Option key, it appears. When you get to the library, when you see the library option appear, you need to come down and select it. Then once you've selected it, you'll see library is right up here in the very top of the window. If you don't want to remember this on your own machines ever again, simply grab this library icon up here at the very top of the window and drag it over here under favorites. And when you let go, it will stay here forevermore. And you can easily then get to your library simply by clicking on it here. To get to the profile that we just built, you go into your library, then you go into Color Sync, you go into Profiles, and it will be sitting somewhere in here. So in mine, it's this one right here. This is the profile that we made right here. However, there is no real advantage to finding your profile because your profile is specific to the monitor. There is no advantage of making a profile on this iMac right here and moving it to that one. That completely defeats the purpose. The profile is specific and unique to the thing that you made it on. There's no reason to move it.
I'm not seeing the colors.
It's like a,
This is
yeah, you open and you
Then it looks like they may have you locked out on these machines. Yeah, guys, it looks like they've got them locked out on this. So what can I tell you? Don't worry about these. Again, they will hopefully get this issue worked out, and then all of these will then be calibrated, and you guys will be good to go. But it might be worth asking at the front desk, you know, do you guys have, has this been color profiled? Has this been calibrated? Are we good to go on this guy? It would be worth asking. Yes. Same thing. There's just in PCs, it's a different software. The same company makes software to run on your PC, so you should be fine being able to do it on your PC. What about where this thing gets saved? Again, it doesn't matter to you really where they save it. You're just using it. And there's no reason, if you move it, you can't use it. So there's no real reason to go after it. In the Mac world, these things, the extension on the end is ICC, which stands for International Color Consortium. In PC, I think it's ICM. It's International Color. I don't know. I think it's ICM. So they all work the same way. Okay. Questions? Okay, I am gonna get this. There's so much more I wanted to get to, but we're not gonna get to tonight. But I promised you guys that I would get you calibration for your cameras, and I'm actually gonna get you to do it. So I'm going to put something on our server really quick, because I think this goes to a lot of other people's issues in terms of getting predictable color. So, hopefully I've got this thing and I can do this quickly. Yes. Almost there, guys. By the way, okay, so if you go to the very same class partition, the class projects folder, inside that should now be a new folder called camera calibration. You guys see that? No? Do you find it? You need to drag that onto your desktop, preferably on your hard drive if you have one, and take it home with you. The software, there's 2 pieces of software on there. Again, they are free software, and then there's an image file of mine that's in there as well. So I'm going to go through how you actually build, how we go through the very same step of what we just did for our monitors, how you do one for a camera sensor. Remember the thing that we looked at. So what I've just done, go back to this really fast. What I've just done is taking care of this part of the equation right here. You've got a file in Adobe RGB. We just built a monitor profile. Everybody's going to have a unique monitor profile that will then take the color that's in here, theoretical color space, and take it out to all these device-dependent color spaces and adjust the color for them. Make sense? So now we're going to do the one to get it in from your camera. And everybody should be doing this for your own cameras. And by the way, I'm telling you this right now. You know you guys are in Digital 1. We left Digital 1, we left Digital 2 in the dust about 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago. This is shit nobody's doing. Nobody does this here until you get to my retouching class. I'm bringing you guys into the party because there's no reason that you should be doing this wrong for the next 3 years, right? From the get-go, because you're all, again, I know you're all hungry for this. I know that you care about this stuff. And so anyway, that's, what can I tell you? Okay, so here we go. Has that copied over to your file yet? It's in the Dropbox. It's in, so go to that guy, and in class projects under Engelhard, it's that thing called camera calibration. Just drag it to your desktop. And I'm going to find mine. Okay. So what you should have in that folder, did it copy over yet? Okay. I'll wait. Tell me as soon as it does. Probably. So happy they swapped this out with a really high-speed server. You know, the way things are going, they might bring dial-up back. Say what? That happens. I mean, you guys are just going to come over to my house. We'll do it there. No. I love dogs, though. I live in a dog-friendly building.
Okay, cool.
All right, have you guys copied this over yet?
It's still going.
It's like there.
It's not even like there.
Yeah, mine's, oh no.
It's like so close. Well, better hurry up because we've got 13 minutes to do this. Oh, well, actually, we got 15. Okay, are you there?
Close
Oh,
enough.
close enough? No, you're not close enough.
About.
Yeah, that about 10 seconds is one of the greatest lies of all time.
So you take your 10 seconds or
Right.
The deducting seconds now, it's just less than a minute.
it was less than I think it's only 10 seconds. I'm gonna send you my
You know, they
Are you there?
Yes.
Okay. All right, here. We got to do this quick, so pay attention and do this with me. If you look inside that folder, you should see a raw file. You do. Hopefully, you have a CR2 file in there. We need to make this a DNG file. So if you double-click on this, it will launch into Camera Raw. This is the easiest way to convert this to a DNG. It opens up in Camera Raw. You simply come over to the lower left-hand corner of Camera Raw, and you click on Save Image. A dialog box will open up. It's going to generate a DNG copy of this file for us. Where do you want to save this? You want to save it in the very same location where it came from. So that's the only thing. We're not changing anything. This should all be done by default. The file naming of this, it's simply going to get renamed. Instead of having a CR2 at the end, it's going to have a DNG at the end, which is exactly what you want. You want the files to have the same name, just a different extension. You can change what extension, whether it's in caps or smalls right here. The rest of this, you can actually leave its default and simply hit save. You will see a little spinning wheel down right next to that save image. If you were going to do 30 of these or 100 of these all at once, you could do that. This thing has now done its work. You can hit cancel. We're not going to open this into Photoshop yet. So if you then go back and look at where that file came from, you will see that indeed there is a copy of the DNG file that's sitting in there right next to it. I want you to click on that file one time. Don't double click. I don't want you to open it. If it opened up, close it up and just click once on it. Hit the return key on your keyboard, which will cause it to copy only the file name. And then go up to the edit menu, come down and do copy. We're just copying the file name. That's all that we want to do. The next thing that is in your folder, now there's two pieces of software in your folder. They essentially do the same thing. If one doesn't work on your machine, the other one will work on your machine. The one that I personally like the best is the DNG, is the Passport Color Checker Profile. So it is this one right here. It is the DNG, no, it's not this DNG. It's the Passport Color Checker software. If you double click on that, it will launch. And a screen will come up, and it will say, it'll give you all these remindings about you should be calibrating. Yeah, we already know that. You need to then find that DNG that you just created on your desktop. If you can't find the DNG, you can actually come up to the File menu and come down and do Sorry, you need to be in the passport software. Up to the file menu and come down to add image. But if you can find that in your Finder, it's just easier to drag that file onto this window. So let me, so you're looking for the DNG profile, I mean the DNG that we just created, the one that, the name that we just copied. So I'm gonna go back to mine. So here's mine, guys, right here. Look at my screen really quick. So it's the DNG. You grab and you drag it on top of this window and let go. And it should load your image. If you have a software crash or something like that doesn't work, there's another program in here called the DNG Profile Editor. It works slightly different. If we have time, I'll actually show you that one as well. But this thing should be loading like this. And what it should ultimately do is it should find the color target for you. Did it find yours? And it should put this grid on yours. Again, another reason that you want to have this passport color checker is it's going to do this miracle thing for you. So did this work for everybody? If it didn't, yours quit. Try and launch it again. If it didn't, then you're on one of the machines that it's not going to work on. So at any rate, if this didn't find the color target, you could use these little green dots on the end of this, let you actually change the shape of this grid to move it around. You can also use the magnifying glass and the plus thing right here. You can move around in this window. Usually it does a really good job of finding these things. So in our case, it did find it. So Lexi, if yours isn't going to, yeah, hopefully it'll work. If it doesn't, just watch. So at any rate, you want to say, go ahead and create profile. When you click on this, it's going to come up and it's going to offer you a window and it's going to name it Canon EOS 5D Mark II because that's the camera that this was made with. I don't want that to be the name because again, this doesn't mean anything to me. Instead, I'm going to name it the name of my file, the shooting that I was doing. So in order to do that, you'll see that you don't have an edit menu here to actually do paste. So if you hit the delete key to get rid of that name, hold down the command key and hit the letter V, it will paste in the name. And this is what you want. You want your camera profiles to be named not only for your camera, but also for the shooting that you're doing, because you would create a different profile for a different lighting scenario. If you're shooting pictures in the middle of the night, you would create, again, a profile for sodium vapor lights in your camera. These profiles are camera specific. You cannot create this profile for one of your 5D Mark IIs and use it on another 5D Mark II. That completely defeats the purpose. Make sense? Yes.
Are you like, would you want to color correct or like color balance the image?
No, you don't need to do any of that stuff on this guy right now. So you just want to name it this way. You also need to see where this thing is being put. So you will see on my screen, it's going in my library. If you'll trace this whole thing, where it actually goes, it's under application support in the Adobe file. As you drag over, it's in camera raw right here, inside camera profiles. This is where this thing is going to be put. You'll see that I've got a ton of profiles in here that I've already built. I do a unique profile for every single shooting that I do. I'm going to actually change this because I've named this. I've done this so many times. I've got like 3,000 of these for this image in my thing right here. So I'm going to just put in a big VER in front of mine so that I can separate it from everybody else. And then hit the save button. And a little thing will run down and it's going to say, we are going to generate your profile. We're going to create it. And hopefully it says it's been done successfully. Did you guys get that? You can then quit this Color Passport program. It's done its job. Go back into the folder, to the file that we originally did. The DNG you can throw away. It's done its job. You don't need to use it ever again. The CR2 file, though, we are going to use. If you double-click on this, it will open back up into Camera Raw. I want you to zoom in on the color checker just a little bit. I just clicked on the magnifying glass to bring in a little bit. I'm going to white balance this first. And again, to white balance, you come up, it's the tool set that's along the very top. You click on the third tool from the left. That is the Pick White Balance tool. You come over, and typically I use the gray square that's right underneath the red. And if you click on that, you will see very little color shift in this at all. So this thing has been color neutralized.
I can tell it's been color neutralized because my RGB readout over here right under my histogram, those RGB values are roughly the same. There's 1 point off. So if all of my RGB values are the same, then I have a neutral gray. That's how color balancing is achieved, is in this neutral gray. But the trick that I want to show you, the third tool from the top over the one, if you hover over it, it says the white balance tool. Yep, this is a game changer for you. This is white balance. This is how you white balance, neutralize your images. If you did not have this color checker in here, you couldn't have made the profile. But if you didn't have it in here, what else in this image could I actually use to white balance this image with? Maybe the cement. So a lot of cement has cast to it. However, I can see a white sign that's in the background here, right here. That's probably legitimately white. So is the bus stop sign. So is the license plate right down here. There's a lot of white things that I can probably find in here to color balance. But I've got the card, so I'm going to use it. But this is the part that I want to show you that you just made. If you look then over underneath the histogram, there's a series of icons that run under here. These are the exact same ones that you have in Lightroom. You can actually do this exact same trick in Lightroom. You can use these color profiles in Lightroom. If you come over to the camera one, though, and you click on it, you will see that under camera profile, it has Adobe Standard. If you click on this drop-down menu, you should be able to find the profile that you just built. And if you find the one that you just built, here's mine right here. I want you to look at what happens to the sweater. Go back and forth from that profile to Adobe Standard. Zoom in to your color card even more and do the same thing again. Again, the color profile that you created. Are you telling me that there's no change here at all? Look at the difference in that. Are you kidding me? So now I've completed this whole part of the puzzle. This is the last part that I'm going to show you guys. I got to jump out of mine really quickly. So this is what we just finished building, is this. This is the profile that sits right here, the camera profile. This profile now has corrected for your sensor's mistakes. And it has brought it in. But what you're seeing is happening in mine again. I told you that my sensor in my camera is hypersensitive to blue. So what's happening with that Adobe Standard is you see that the blues and the purples and that kind of stuff are actually lighter than they're supposed to be. And it's because that part of my sensor is too sensitive, that area of it. How on earth would you do that color correction? How on earth would you know that that's what's going on with your camera? And then how on earth would you do this? Because this isn't changing color everywhere. This is taking very specific range of color and either adjusting its intensity, its saturation, its brightness. Specific. You cannot do this. This is not possible to do with your eyeballs. Are there questions about this? So now you have color neutralized. We used that color checker to white balance. We also used it to take care of the deficiencies in our sensor. You now have perfectly neutral, predictable, perfect color. I promised you that. That's now into here. You now actually can see it on your monitor because we actually took care of that guy as well. And finally, if you actually use the little white patch, watch your eyes because I'm going to turn the light and then we're done. Again, if you had this thing in your camera frame and took this little white patch and read the values because you're shooting tethered, you don't have to shoot everything tethered, but I work with a computer wherever I am. That little white patch right there, if I'm in camera, if I'm in C1 Pro, the value that I shoot for in here is an exposure that gives me a value between 245 and 250. If you're doing this in camera raw, like we're doing right now, you'll see that value actually drop down. As a matter of fact, if you read the white value, can somebody give me the white value on this image right now?
247.
To what?
246, 247.
246, 247. So it's pretty close in this version of camera raw. It changes every time. That will tell you that you have perfect exposure. So now you got perfect exposure. You got perfectly neutral color. You've actually profiled and taken care of your shitty sensor. You've done the same thing with your shitty monitor. I'd say you guys are off to the races. Things are going pretty well for you right now. We're only into week 4. Change your life. Change your life. All those issues that you have been struggling with are now in your grasp to actually change. Now, how do you work with this thing? It gets, sure, I like carrying a computer around with me all the time, whatever. Yes, I do. I love it because I know I've got
all of these issues taken care of. I don't guess about it anymore. Are there questions about this? Yes.
Does the like computer program that goes along with the passport checker come like with the passport checker?
No,
How do
you
we
can
get
download
that?
all of it free.
Really?
Yeah.
Hell yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes, and we will look next week. I'll show you the Adobe version of it because it works slightly different.
Okay.
It gives you the same thing, but it works slightly different. Yes.
Super
Then this.
Yes.
My suggestion to you is, as a student right now, you can check these out of the color lab. You can also check these. They also have these in the photo studio. So if you're in any of those environments, you have these available to you to actually do the work with, and then save your money. Deal? All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Oh, wait. The homework next week. Shit. Okay, really quick. No, really quick. This is going to happen really quick. Go online really fast. And I need you to go to Google Images. So just type in Google Images. And then go to Google Images. And once you get to Google Images, type in high key. High key, H-I-K-E-Y, and hit enter. And you will see what high key images are. They are images that are primarily made, although there's a lot of people in this one, they don't necessarily have to be people, whatever. They're primarily made out of lighter tones. It's a dominance of lighter tones. So you'll see a lot of stuff in here. This is all people, Jesus. A lot of times they'll do, you know, like landscapes or that kind of stuff. Or here, the light flowers, all that kind of. This is high key imagery right here. Type in low key and do another search for that. L-O-W. Yeah. Oh, that was actually pretty good. So now you will actually see examples of low-key images. They are really dominated by a series of dark tones. Your assignment, read it, but your shooting assignment for this week is to go out and do a shooting, hopefully multiple shootings of a series of high-key images and a series of low-key images, and you are going to bring those next week. You do not need to do final prints, but you are going to turn in your catalog to me. This is the next new assignment, and we do it exactly the way we did the last one. The first thing I want to look at is a library of your collected images of high key, low key. If there's any questions about this, post them.
Did you want that to be done in the studio?
And you can be done anywhere you want.
And like how many for the catalog do you have?
Read the assignment. It'll tell you about it. And if you forget this, simply go back to Google Images.
Okay. That's it though, then just high key, low key.
I think that's it, but you should look at the Moodle site. You guys should know that about me right now. I have no idea what I have no idea what I'm doing. Did I really just say that? I did really just say that, didn't I?